And I now, as I'm thinking about just talking to a lot of black voters, particularly in southern states over the last, and in Indiana and places that I've just been running around for the last couple of months, Biden is who they wanted originally. Biden was what they were going to go with. Then he got shaky.
He faltered.
He started to seem maybe it won't work. And then I started hearing repeatedly, we're going to have to go to Bloomberg. I mean, black voters, and I've said this before, are, they are very clinical about it. They just want to win. They want Trump gone. That's what they want. And Biden was who they wanted because he's a loyal second to Barack Obama. Full stop. But then when he looked shaky, they're like, we'll go to Bloomberg. So Brown Chapel AME is where they do this ceremony to start off the commemoration of the march over the Edmund Pettus Bridge. It starts with a service in there. We're in that church. Now, the way that black churches work, you have to be invited to sit on the dais. Family sits on the dais. The pastor sits on the dais. Pastor's family, people the pastor says can be up there. Biden was up there. Bloomberg was sitting in the audience. He's stuck in the audience, having to sit there and watch person after person stand up on that church. I mean, Reverend Sharpton was on the dais. That makes sense. Terry Sewell, who's the Alabama Congresswoman, that's her home church. She gets up and says, basically, this is Biden country. This is Biden's home. Biden gets to speak from the pulpit. Bloomberg does too, but he's in the audience. He's stuck there having to grimace and watch everyone laud this other person, laud this other candidate. He couldn't even leave because he would have had to cross across the pulpit and leave. It would have been completely disrespectful. So he's sitting there just grimacing. I'm mostly watching his face as he's just miserable. And when he finally gets up to speak, after really being laid into by the pastor for his policies against black people, stop and frisk, things like that, people turn their back on him in the church. That doesn't happen in churches. These are formal. AME is a formal kind of church. When Biden gets up, nothing but love. He gets up and speaks. He turns to Reverend Sharp and he says, you remember this and that, Rev? Pastor, we go back. He's got relationships. Bloomberg just had money.
Hello, family. This is African Esquire TV. I'm your host, Tony Cherie. What I want to talk about today is what has been on a lot of people's timelines, and that is the fact that the black vote has essentially saved the candidacy of Joe Biden. So just to give a little context to this conversation, in case some of you have not been following politics closely, although I'm sure most of you have, but just in case you haven't been. So, of course, there's a Democratic primary going on right now in the United States, and that is for the presidency. Whoever wins the primary is going to run against Donald Trump. So, as in any primary, a lot of people from different walks of life come and say that they want to be the next president, they want to be the nominee for the presidency. And in this case, we've had people who were pretty much moderate Democrats. By moderate, I mean people who were not really against what's going on as far as the system in the United States, whether that be the banking systems on Wall Street, whether that be the prison industrial systems, the education systems, people who were not against the systems in themselves, but at the same time, they wanted to make appeals for the system to be cleaned up a little bit. Let's say we stop locking up so many people, or we stop allowing the banks to have so much deregulation. These are the types of moderate Democrats that were running. And of course, you have two people who are very progressive, that being Bernie Sanders, and next to him, a little least progressive, but still a lot more progressive than the other moderates, was Elizabeth Warren. Now, for a while, I would say probably a month or so, it's been said that Bernie Sanders was leading the race, but a lot of people have said that Bernie Sanders is not going to do well with the black community. And instead, Joe Biden, the former vice president with President Obama, he was going to probably win the white black vote. And the issue with that is that black people in this country suffer from a system of mass incarceration. The system of mass incarceration was exacerbated by the crime bill that Joe Biden actually created. And what we see when you look in his past is that he was very fiery with his language when describing the type of people he was targeting with this crime bill. It's not that they said black people, it's not that they say the N-word, but they'll say things that allude to the image that has been perpetrated of black people. For example, they'll say we have to get those thugs off the street, or we have to get those gangs and put them where they belong. We have to civilize them. These are the types of coded languages that have been used, and it's still used if you pay attention. I mean, I thought it was very significant that a lot of people brushed over when not Ferguson, when the Baltimore riots were happening, and President Obama, the president of the United States, got on national television and said, the people who are rioting are thugs. And of course, the people who were rioting were almost all Black people. So the coded languaging, he straight up, the president of the United States, the Black president, got up and said they were thugs, and hardly a peep from the Black community on that, which is disturbing. But that's a whole nother issue. So, but Joe Biden, obviously, he not only committed a crime to me, because when you look at these systems of racism, to me, they are human rights crimes or crimes against humanity. What the prison industrial complex has done in the Black community, especially since the crime bill, has been inhumane. It has deprived a lot of us from our rights. It has destroyed a lot of our families. It has destroyed our economic viability. So to me, these are crimes that were committed against Black people. But since then, he's done nothing to remedy those crimes. And unfortunately, for a lot of our people, the way that you remedy a past of racism is by getting next to a Black person. And in this case, Joe Biden obviously was able to get next to Barack Obama and be his vice president, therefore erasing the history of racist comments or the history of racist policies, therefore erasing the history of complacency. The fact that there has been no action done on these issues. You know, I hate when they say, well, now that I'm president, I'm sorry I did that in the past, but now that I'm president, I'm going to do something about it. Well, were you speaking about these issues before you were up for candidacy? I can say that at least about Bernie Sanders, who did also vote for the crime bill. But since then, I can honestly say I've seen him outside of candidacy speaking against the same system that he actually voted for. But now that Joe Biden is up for candidacy, now we have a different story. Now it's, you know, that was a bad thing that we did. The same thing with Mike Bloomberg, who's no longer in the race. He said, oh, you know, when Stop and Frisk was happening, it was the hot thing. It was, yeah, we have to actually start stopping these people and get these guns and blah, 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 blah. And you use a coded language. You know, we have to get these criminals. We have to target these criminals. We know where they live. We know where they are. But now when he's running for presidency, he hasn't done anything about Stop and Frisk all this time, but now he's against it. So these are politics, of course. We understand that we're being lied to. I don't think that there's anything new about that. We understand we're being played. To give, you know, Black people a little more credit, all people are being played. But the problem is when we don't know how to play chess along with our opponents, because while they play, we're not playing with them. We're actually thinking that these are people who are going to do right by us. We believe that these are our white saviors. Now, the problem that I have is not so much the Black people who voted Joe Biden in, because I understand why they did. I understand this because I've been paying attention to the Black vote. I've been reading about the Black vote, and I understand how Black people have tended to vote. And we tend to vote not based on people who are actually showing us that they're going to do something, or even we tend to vote even when they show us that they didn't do anything and we still reelect them. We more so vote for them based on symbolism, based on allegiances. And so it's obvious to me that this was not going to be any different with Joe Biden. You know, we can't be too upset at the fact that Joe Biden did get the Black vote, because there's been no massive effort to change the consciousness of Black people in the South, in the North. I mean, there's been no massive effort to actually get inside of our communities, going door to door and actually teaching our people about politics, teaching our people about political maturity. You know, it's one thing to know about politics, another thing not to know about leverage, group leverage, not to know about how to get your collective interests met. These are the things that we should have been trying to push, you know, so that more than actually voting, we actually get something for voting. So I can't be too mad at us. What I'm more irked at is I would say the political Black bourgeoisie. And those are the people, some people call them the blue checks, you know, people who are of the Democratic establishment, or they think they are. They're the establishment. To me, they're the establishment's puppets almost. because they have no actual real power in the party. Their power is contingent on their usefulness to pacifying Black people or even explaining away Black behaviors for the benefit of the Democratic Party. And the narrative that they have been going with is that we should not be questioning the fact that people who have been brutalized by a prison industrial system have voted for the person who authored the bill that created that system and has been silent on it up until it was inconvenient for him to be silent, and has now offered a real plan to undo the effects of that system. So instead of being honest, it's about honesty, like not trying to put on a show for the people, white people. I think a lot of us are trying to show that Black people, we can do it too. We're political too, blah, blah, blah. Most people aren't political in any community. Let's be clear about that. But the fact is that if we're trying to pretend that they voted for Biden more so not because of his association to Blackness, the same way that they voted for Clinton, the same way that they were about to vote for Hillary Clinton because they associated her as being Clinton's wife. And remember, Clinton was the first Black president to a lot of people. They were both about to vote for Hillary Clinton until Barack Obama became the choice. And they're like, oh, a real Black person, so let's vote for him. But we can't pretend that we're not swayed by these symbols. Symbolism has been the secret trick, the magic trick that Democrats do anytime that they need to appeal to Black people. You see what happened this past weekend. There was the 55th commemoration of Selma. And what were they looking for? Not, what are you politicians going to do about our communities? What are you politicians going to actually do to leverage our people out of this situation? What are you going to do? No, they're looking for who attended the Selma event. Why? Because of symbolism. They wanted to see someone affirm the symbol of the Black Civil Rights Movement. So they weren't, and it's one thing to be interested in someone showing reverence to this past, but to not get a thing from it, you don't get anything whether or not Joe Biden goes to the Selma event or Bernie Sanders go to the Selma event. But the things that we could get things out of, such as undoing the prison industrial complex, changing the education system. To me, it's just criminal that we still have an education system that's based off of the funding is based off of property taxes, which is clearly something that is classist and meant to give a certain people a certain advantage. But we're not worried about those things. We're worried about, did you attend Selma? Did you show reverence to the civil rights movement? All of these things that make you feel good. You feel like you're being represented because this person can cry in your church and can go in your pulpit and stand next to your pastor. These are the things that make you feel good, but they do nothing to your actual ability to have any type of economic viability. They do nothing to get you out of the situation you're in. And that's the one thing I can't stand about these elections, is that no one is talking about how do we get out of the situation we're in. We hear people talking about, oh, this person is favorable in this way to the Black community. This person's favorable in that way. This person really permeates with the Black community. But are any of these people going to undo the systemic racism that oppresses our people? Of course not. And they don't have an intention of doing it. One thing, I was listening to Democracy Now! When I was on my way home, and they brought up a point. This is the primary election. Do you think that you think Joe Biden's going to be talking about Black people in the general election when he's talking to Trump? And at that point, he has the nomination, assuming he gets the nomination. You think he's going to be, and this goes for Bernie Sanders too, because Bernie Sanders to me is very much the same in this regard. These are people who are not, these are people who are complacent when it comes to the severity of Black issues, and they have their own spin on it and their own willingness to address it. However, let's be real. Bernie Sanders has shown a lot more, has shown a lot more concrete policies that would be of benefit to Black people. But let's assume that Biden gets the nomination. Do you think he's going to be talking about Black issues? Do you think, or Bernie Sanders, do you think he's going to be talking about Black issues when they're facing off against Trump? Because more than likely they're not. At that point, they know they have the Black vote. That's basically what happened with Hillary Clinton. Remember, she's like, I know I have the Black vote. And right now, Trump is talking to these whites and to these Latinos or Latinx, And we need to talk to them. The Black people, we have them on lock. This was the assumption, right? So it's pretty clear that that would probably be the same situation. Usually in primaries, our issues are left out. It's only, not the primaries, the general election, our issues are left out. It's only in the primaries where they actually need the Black vote and they don't feel the confidence that they have it already. That's when you'll start seeing them appearing at your church and rallies and talking about different issues. That's when you'll see it. But you won't see it so much in the general election. Now, the thing that irritated me with the establishment, bourgeoisie Black people, is that, the message that they were conveying is that these people weren't ill-informed. They voted that way because they wanted to basically find a politician who is the most electable politician, right? And who's going to beat Trump. As if that's good. If every other community is concerned about themselves and we are just thinking about beating Trump and not about ourselves, that's not good. This is not political maturity. I keep saying this word over and over again because it's sad when you think about the fact that this is what Malcolm X was talking about when, almost 50 years ago. This is what Malcolm X was talking about when he was saying being politically mature, when he was saying we have to actually have things that we're going to put on the agenda and actually expect to be met. Beating Donald Trump should not be the total goal of Black people. Yes, that's the only thing that we have to do is just beat Donald Trump. So basically we're putting ourselves down for the rest of America because we know that Trump isn't good, not just for Black people, but he's not good for all of America. And we're only concerned with beating him. That's a problem too. That should be a problem because that means we're still psychologically slaves. In this case, we're slaves to the Democrats because we're willing to lay down our interests. We're willing to lay down our ability to actually change the situation because you can't convince me that we're going to change our situation from voting when we've been voting for 50 years and we've gotten nothing out of it. So you can't convince me of that. But when we're talking about what we can actually do to change the situation, that's left off the table. All we have to do is get Trump off the office. That's the thing. That's the narrative that's being spun. And it's being celebrated by some people who are saying, Black people, they came together for us. They understand that, maybe Bernie Sanders has some policies that would benefit them more because obviously if Black people have the least health care, they would be benefited from having universal health care. Obviously, if Black people are the most incarcerated, they would be benefited from the abolition of the private prison industry. These are obvious things that would benefit them, but good old Black people, you're going to lay down your interests for us. You're going to do it just to beat Trump, even if you get nothing out of it, even if you're still in the same position you are in 4 years from now. And that's kind of the thing that I notice a lot of our people are kind of okay with. It's like, yeah, we just need to get Trump out of office because 4 years from now, we're going to try to get what we really need. But right now we need to focus on getting Trump out of office, as if some of us will be here 4 years from now. As if some of us will not die 4 years from now from being inside of environments where there are multinational companies pumping pollution into their communities. As if some of us not be in prison 4 years from now. As if some of us will not be dead from not having health care 4 years from now. We should wait for 4 years and just put the country first and elect Trump. And then after Trump's elected, we can actually talk about getting what we need. These are the selfish things that the Democrats expect from us. We're supposed to lay ourselves down. We're supposed to propel them. We're supposed to do what's going to be good for their establishment. And sadly, we fall for it. Because psychologically, we might be free physically, but psychologically, we are really still their slaves. Psychologically, colonialism has jacked us up to the point where we're free. We could walk around, but we're not free as far as our actual ability to think independently and think for ourselves and think for our own good. So I just say this to say that these are not positive things, and these are things that actually should be condemned. And I'm looking for, out of all of this, I hope what happens with this, because I have a feeling, and who knows, maybe I'm wrong, but I do have a feeling that that the Democratic establishment will essentially succeed, and Bernie Sanders will be no longer a viable candidate to the masses of Americans, and Joe Biden will probably get the nomination. And let's say Biden gets the nomination, or he loses, or he wins the Trump, whatever. I really hope that whatever happens, that we take notes on a lot of things. We have to take notes on the fact that we are being played. We have to take notes on the fact that these people who say that they are our friends are clearly using us. We have to take notes on the fact that we don't have 4 years to wait for a presidency that's not going to do anything for us. To wait for an election that's not going to do anything for us. Don't act like voting is that important when we've been voting and voting and voting, and we're still in the same economic condition that we were in when we first started voting. That doesn't make any sense. In fact, you can actually make the argument when you look at how things were at the time where the right to vote was granted, that they were better off than us because they actually had an economic base. You know, there were actually black people who were actually starting schools, and there were more black businesses. Today, we have the same cycle going on and on and on, and we haven't said, stop, let's reevaluate. I think we need a moratorium on voting. That's my personal belief. I think we have to say, black people, at least in the national election, we need to stop voting and reevaluate and regroup. Because only a fool will keep doing the same thing every single time and expecting a different result. But that's all I have on this subject. I love to see your guys' thoughts. I will see you all in the next video.